Hello, good evening, good night, good morning, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. Had a little problem to join this live, but I think that I'm live. I think that I'm live on a number of platforms. So I'm gonna check my platforms really, really quickly. I am late. It had problems to really connect all these platforms. It still says that X is not connected. But again, if you are hearing me and seeing me, let me know if you are hearing me and seeing me. I should be live on LinkedIn, on a couple of Facebook pages, live on YouTube as well. All right, so I'm checking my platforms. The initial stream would have had to been canceled because I wasn't able to really to connect to it. All right, so I'm seeing that I am live here on LinkedIn, and I'm just checking my Facebook page. As you come on, let me know if you are hearing me and seeing me. Yes, I'm super late, but I had problems, as I pressed my live and I was ready to go live, it said it's not connected. I was only going to go live on X. That's not what I wanted to do, so I had to kind of redo everything. So, all right. So let me know if you are hearing me and seeing me. Feel free to drop it in the comments. Let me put across my comments here so that I could see. Right, okay, good. Okay, so I'm seeing myself live. Here it's looking like I'm live everywhere. All right. So again, good evening to everybody. Good evening, good evening. Well, I shouldn't say good evening. I usually start by saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are joining me from, right? Again, let me know if you're hearing me and seeing me. I think that's fixed, and you should be hearing and seeing me. So whether you are joining me from Trinidad and Tobago, good night to you all. I know it's like 8:30ish, or you're joining me from somewhere else in the Caribbean, just let me know. If you're joining me from the US, Canada, Europe, Africa, whatever platform you're joining me on, let me know. Or even here in Asia, which is where I am, I'm live from Vietnam, and of course it is 7:30 a.m. It's 7:30 a.m. So wonderful and interesting to be live across multiple time zones, right? And I'm currently based here, and I want to say thank you so much for those that are on live or those that will watch the replay. Thank you so much for just joining me here for this and spending this Friday evening or Saturday morning with me. And for persons who don't know me, who just happen on the live, my name is Debbie Jolie, and I am a marketing strategist, personal branding consultant. I'm a lecturer, and I've spent the last two decades really working with a number of entrepreneurs, working with professionals, working with organizations, really to help them become more visible, attract more customers, build brands that they actually remember, right? So that's a synopsis of me, but it gets into why we having this live today, right? One of the things that I really enjoy and love about marketing is really that it's there has always been misconceptions, right? That marketing is kind of like advertising, and it's just about the creativity and you're posting stuff on social media. But I take it from a different stance, and maybe that's because of my experience across the board in sales and marketing. But marketing at its core is really meant to solve business problems or issues that come up in business, right? It's really about helping companies generate more leads, convert more customers, increase your revenue, of course, and ultimately help your business to become much more sustainable, and help your business to grow, right? That is exactly what marketing is all about. And it's a little bit about what the series here is, right? So um, third, this is my third live for July. I have one more on Monday. And the live, of course, is called the Client Growth Series. And why? Because, hi Tessa, how are you? It's called the Client Growth Series because of my discussions this year, because we kind of in the next half of 2026, and so many persons will be kind of re-evaluating where they are. But these last few weeks in July, or the lives, have been really meant to look at some of the challenges that businesses have and businesses face. And a lot of times, whether that's a small business or whether that's a medium or large, I always get, hey, we don't really have, we struggle with sales, we struggle with sales, we struggle with revenue, right? So we're going to really try to break down what in this life, some practical, some realistic strategies, right, that you could actually implement to help you with that inconsistent sales, right? So the lives are not meant to be theoretical at all, right? I had the last live I had Mona on, and we spoke about Bear Connect and how we use that automation to help us really get leads on LinkedIn, right? And that's what I want to focus on, really practical tips that you could implement now as we head into this next half of the year. Hopefully I'm not going to use any too much marketing jargon on this live, but really meant to help you understand and give you tips on how you can run a small business better, how you could sell products if you have an e-commerce platform and you're struggling there. How can you better sell products online? How can you sell your professional services? Or even if you've been thinking about starting a business, maybe some of the things we're going to discuss will help you in terms of streamlining your activities to help you grow, right? So today, this morning, we're going to really be looking at a problem that almost every business owner will experience at some point in time, which of course is, as I mentioned, inconsistent sales. In entrepreneurship and or in my content, I always talk about feast and famine. We go through a period of feast and famine, but there are gaps in what we're doing, and which is why we have those particular issues. So let me just start with a question, of course. Have you ever had a month where everything was, pretty okay, right? You had inquiries coming in, you had customers who were buying, your phone was ringing for the right reasons. Customers wanted to have a chat with you and work with you, right? And you're feeling great because, okay, you have work is coming in, and you're excited. And so sometimes small business owners experience this, right? Then you get to the next month, or maybe you've on the third month, and you find things have slowed a little bit. There's some silence now, not really getting the inquiries, no new customers, right? And then you're looking at your website, right? You're not seeing the traffic, you're not seeing things added to the cart. you know, you're looking at your Gmail perhaps and all and saying, but wait, no, not really. You know, I sent out proposals and not getting the replies, right? Now, that is quite common, and you might feel that something, you know, you might ask yourself, what are you doing, right? But this space again of feast and famine, you are not alone, right? One of the biggest misconceptions is that if a business is successful, it wouldn't have a slow period, and that is not true. The best and the greatest brands have slow periods, but the difference here is that these large companies or big businesses have built-in systems in place to help them kind of reduce the friction that is associated with these, what we would call a slow period, or a period where things change and customers are not buying, right? So today I want to share 3 systems, tools, activities that I don't think we focus on enough as business owners and our entrepreneurs. And let me know if this is a space where you are challenged or you haven't even thought about, right? So let me know. Again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Tell me where in the world you are joining me from. If you're hearing me and seeing me, we're going through my live here, which is the client series. And we want to really talk about, you know, fixing that inconsistent sales, right? Oh, hi, Shelly. How are you? Hope you are doing good, Shelly. All right. So let me know if you're joining me on Facebook. I have a few persons on Facebook. If you are seeing me on LinkedIn as well. If you're joining me on YouTube, it's supposed to be live there. Just let me know, right? So we're going to talk about why following up is one of the biggest challenges, but it's also one of the biggest opportunities that you are probably missing. Following up, right? That simple thing, right? We're going to look at how people, or how you convert more, right? Persons sometimes do not, okay, good. Sometimes persons do not think about conversion, or really their conversion rate, right? And also we are going to we're going to discuss why your existing customers might be one of the most valuable resources, and we tend to just ignore that, right? We always say, okay, we're looking for customers, we're looking for new customers and so on. But if you're in business for 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, you really should have existing customers that you are also pulling from, right? So again, throughout the session, we're going to try and use some real life examples here, so that you know it's more palatable to individuals, right? So let's just dive straight in, right? Again, I want to ask another question quickly to persons. How many of you have ever said that business is slow right now? Just type in the chat. How many person, in fact, that's the conversation I've been having for 2026. Many individuals have said, Debbie, oh, I kind of find it a little slow, right? People are not buying. And now, while that could be true for a number of reasons, right? It could be the economy. We have all types of things going on. We have a lot of geopolitical issues, especially this year. So the idea that things are slow is not uncommon, right? And in my experience, and you know, I've worked in marketing for a long time, the issue is partly that, but it is also partly about what you're doing in your own business as well, right? Companies don't just fail overnight, and it's typically not so much around the product itself, but as I mentioned, that I'm seeing is really a gap in what we are doing. So people tend to struggle because they don't have a system to help them find customers on a regular basis. They don't have a system for helping them convert customers on a regular basis. They don't have a system for keeping customers, right? And I think that is where the gap is, right? And that's what we're going to kind of talk about tonight, this morning, right? So, all right, let me ask another question here. Have you ever inquired about something in the online space? It could be WhatsApp, it could be Facebook, it could be anything, and nobody ever got back to you. You ever send a DM or a WhatsApp to a company and nobody replied, nobody answered? I mean, I could tap yes, right? Right? That has happened many times, right? And I know Caribbean entrepreneurs know about this, right? Or maybe somebody, or maybe let's say the person replied once, right? They acknowledge you, but after you know, it just went silent after that, right? This happens all the time. It happens every day. It is like a common mistake that businesses make, and sometimes we as an individual assume that silence just means that the customer perhaps isn't interested, right? Or let's say, or let me go back. Let's say you've provided the customer. Let's say the customer has reached out to you, right? You have provided the customer information, and maybe they said they will get back to you, or they have gone silent now, right? As a business owner, right, we might say that person isn't interested. They reached out, they got the information, but they never followed up. You trying to follow up, but they have gone silent here, right? Most times the perception is, well, if the person is not responding, they're not interested, right? It makes me remember a conversation I had recently. But I want to tell people this, right? And you have to think about yourself in the same position. People are many times, they are busy. Professionals, you know, I might reach out to HR managers, etc., and they might tell me, yes, Debbie, we interested in a certain type of training, but then they kind of go silent, right? So people get busy naturally, right? They get busy. Life could kind of get in the way. The emails you send them get buried in other emails that kind of become a priority. Again, life happens, your child gets sick, and so on and so on. And so this is why, or people end up in meetings. I remember being in many meetings, and you have to respond to customers, but it didn't happen. So don't feel as a business owner that silence means people don't care or they don't want to buy, right? People might have all intentions of buying, they just mightn't buy today, right? And so that's what we have to think about as entrepreneurs. So let me give you another example, right? Let's say you have an online skincare business. People come into your website. They might spend a little time on your website. They look at some of your products. You know, they add products to their cart. We do this all the time with Amazon too. I'll tell you a story that I do. So you might put things in your cart. It comes up to a few $100, and then you just leave. You close it off and you go, right? Now, let's think of a business owner that is seeing what we would call an abandoned cart online, right? And many people might say, okay, well, these customers, they don't want the product anymore, right? So they're not interested, right? But we never know what's happening on the other side with that customer, right? The customer might have closed it off because, okay, we have food in the kitchen, or you have a pot on, and you have to go and see about that now. Okay. Or you might have, you know, a young baby, the baby's crying, and you have closed it off because you're going to see about your child, right? Or, right, I know this, right, some professionals might get upset. You just went on Amazon to just check something quickly because you know you're going into a meeting, so you put things in the cart, but you kind of get called away to that meeting, so you close it off, right? A number of things could happen why people would abandon a cart, right? Or let's say they check their online balance, right? They expected to get paid, they didn't get paid, okay, they just don't have the funds, right? So they might have to wait another 2 or 3 days before they could make the purchase. So the assumption is that, okay, we might look at that as a business owner and say, okay, the customer is not interested because they just put stuff in the cart and they didn't buy, because we are not aware of the issues or things that might have occurred, right? And the problem is here, as the business owner, we make that assumption and we say, okay, well, they're not interested, and we never follow up. Now imagine this instead, right? And think about Amazon as I kind of talk about this, because you might let's say that you had stuff in the cart and then you left it, right? Now if a business is able to have some sort of automation where, let's say, 2 hours after you leave that abandoned cart, you receive an email. Quite common with Amazon, right? You might you might have something, you put it in your cart, but Amazon is sending you an email on that, right? And they'll just send you they'll send you something friendly, because it's just a follow-up, right? They might say something along the lines of, oh, we saw you, okay, we saw that you put this in the cart, and you might or it's some kind of reminder, like, okay, here is a moisturizer that could complement something that is already in your cart, right? And so it's just a little nudge. Is no major pressure, no hard selling. It's just a reminder to let you know, hey, you have these things in the cart, and there is also something that you could there's a complementary product that you could use, right? So that's one. Maybe you still haven't gone back to your cart. Then the next day you get another email now, and the other email, let's say it's the same skincare product we're talking about. You get another email that talks about the importance of the vitamin C in the moisturizer that you have in the cart, and how it helps improve your skin and improve the adult skin. And it now, the email has moved from just the nudge that you got the 2 hours after you abandon the cart, and now they're in a space where they're actually educating you about the product, right? So if you're, let's say, a person over 40 and you have issues with your skin, and now they send you an email that is pretty educational about how that product is going to help you, then you might say, okay, I think it's time for me to purchase, because it kind of taps into something, some sort of need or want that you have, right? And you might purchase then, right? Or maybe not. Let's say you get those 2 nudges and you still didn't purchase, right? And maybe another 2 days pass and you get another email, and this email now says, here is 10% off. If you're still interested, you need to kind of complete that purchase now, right? So you're getting 10% off. And then suddenly, now that becomes incentive enough that you turn that what the business would have seen as an abandoned cart, it now becomes revenue, because hey, you getting 10% off your cart, and that is enough incentive to get you to buy. So here's what occurred. The business in many instances was following up. They didn't just let you leave that abandoned cart and not continue to nudge you. And that is super, super important to do as business owners. Don't just assume that you get that you haven't gotten a response to a proposal, so that means they're not interested. We have to follow up, right? And it could take place in all those instances. You can't just assume, okay, well, I'm a service-based business, I didn't get a reply to the email. Just like how Amazon has their automated process, we as service providers must also have a process in how we follow up with our customers. So let me use my business as a another quick example, right? Suppose a company contacts me, they're interested in some sort of LinkedIn training for their staff. Great, right? We have a call, we have a discovery call, and I get to understand their issues and problems, their challenges. I send them through a proposal. Now, what do many consultants do? Sometimes they wait. They just wait for a response, right? And again, I had this conversation with a colleague of mine quite recently. Sometimes you follow up, you send them an email, right? Sometimes we just assume the silence from the client or the prospective client means that they are not interested, but that is not a good assumption to make, right? Instead, you might want to send maybe a day later or 2 days later, you want to send them a simple email. I would send an email to say a day after, hi Joe, hi John, I just want to check in to make sure, 1, you got the proposal, and 2, are there any questions? Do you have any questions or anything about the proposal? Again, that's it. It's no pressure, it's no desperation, it's just a conversation to make sure that they receive it. That's a first kind of follow-up, right? This is something else I do as a follow-up, especially with new and prospective customers, right? A week later, I might send them something that is very specific to them that they might be interested in, right? Sometimes it might be like a case study or some sort of data, depending on what it is and the customer, right? So I might just send them a link to something, or sometimes I have some case studies on depending on what the proposal was about, and I'll send them a case study or some data points, right? It's usually on a sheet, and I would indicate, okay, well, listen, you might have been, this is something we were discussing. You were discussing something about LinkedIn, for instance, and there's some data here from a training I did before, where the company said, listen, we got like about 150% increase in engagement through utilizing LinkedIn. Or I could send them some testimonials to show that, okay, clients showed that they had improvement in their output because of the LinkedIn training, right? And I do that through a case study. That is also a second follow-up. What that does, though, similar to the example before about adding value, right? And educating the customer, because that's what you do when you're adding value. That second follow-up to me does good in terms of helping to stay top of mind, and depending on what that follow-up is all about, it can also help to persuade the customer to reach out to you. I've found that to be true. They reach out to you because now they say, okay, gosh, I forgot about this, and this is interesting information and interesting statistic, and I think it's time for us to buy, right? And so I want persons to realize that sometimes people don't buy. It's not because they're not interested, right? It's just because something is going on at that point in time, right? They may have forgotten, yes, sure. But this is one thing that I've kind of learned now, and I don't take offense when people may not be responding initially, right? People are far more likely to buy from a business that they remember. So I want you to focus on being top of mind. That is what is important, right? So it's not always about if your price is the cheapest. It's not always about the best company in some instances. It's really about how do I stay top of mind with that customer, right? So ask yourself again, how many potential customers have you just let disappear because you just didn't follow up, right? Following up is key, and it's a space where I think we get emotions involved, and then we just say, okay, nah, don't worry, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, great. All right, let me know what you think in the comments. Is following up a space where you have issues and where you feel like, hey, I need to put something in place, right? Because the two examples I give, there is a structure in how those businesses would potentially follow up, right? You must have a system in place in order to follow up, right? So here's another space I see businesses kind of make a misstep, right? And this is where I talk about conversion, right? And this is some analysis a little bit, right? Business owners sometimes think that they need more customers, right? It's like a normal conversation amongst entrepreneurs, right? We need more customers, right? We need more customers, we need more followers, we need more person, we need more traffic to your website, you need more leads, you need more people calling you, you need more inquiries coming through your social channels. And again, some of that is true, but oftentimes the opportunity is not getting more people or more customers. It is really getting better results from the people that you already have, right? And let me explain. Again, let's say you have a skincare business and you have a skincare website and you're getting I don't know, you're getting 500, 1,000 visitors every month, right? But you only have like about 20 people who might purchase, right? Or who might buy. I'm making some figures here, and I need to make sure my maths is correct. Yes. So let's say, okay, so let's say you have 1,000 people coming to your website on average. It could be less too, right? 1,000 persons coming to your website on average, but you only have 20 people purchasing, right? That conversion rate is 2%, right? So 2% of the people who come to your website are actually purchasing, right? This is something I'm in discussions with my SEO person and talking about now. So it's an interesting example, right? Now imagine instead of you spending money to advertise in order to get more customers, let's say you take some time and you actually improve some of the features and the structure of your website itself. So let's say you always had to update your product photos, you decide you're going and do that. Let's say you had customer testimonials sitting down, you add that to it, right? People always like before and after. So we're talking about the skincare stuff. People always like before and after photos and all those things. You started to put that. You update things, you make sure the descriptions are better. You get some tech persons to make sure the website is now functioning a whole lot better. And you notice the next month that 20 turns into 40. Now here's what You didn't spend any money on advertising to get more customers. All you did was improve your structure and your system in order to get more of the same people to actually convert from your website. And so again, so that's just a product-based example. I'll go back to mine. Let's say I receive 10 inquiries for some sort of training or personal branding coaching or something like that, right? 1 out of the 10, or rather out of the 10 inquiries, so let me make sure my maths is good. Out of the 10 inquiries that I've sent through proposals for, only 2 become paying clients. Now, I work with them and everything goes well, right? Now, instead of me trying to immediately try to find another 10 customers and spend money on advertising and run ads and so on, and spend more money to find another 10 customers, I would ask myself, right, what has happened to the other 8, right? Those persons didn't come on board, but maybe something about my proposal isn't clear, or they weren't ready, or something like that, right? So maybe, again, something might not have been clear. So I can go back to them and offer something. I can go back to them and clarify something. At the end of the day, I can get those, say, some, right, perhaps, of those 8 persons to come on board if I'm able to better understand what they were looking for and why they didn't come on board in the first place, right? Now, that is me going back to, let's say, an existing customer or existing prospect, finding out what is the issue or problem, and then getting those persons to actually convert, right? Now, that is what we have to do. At times, we assume that customers, we have to look for new customers, when in fact, people have purchased from us before and they can purchase again. And especially if they had a good experience, then we want to go back to them, right? Because they are actually more likely to buy, right? And in the marketing realm, in the marketing universe, the truth is, they say that existing customers cost us less. Why? Because they already know you, they already use your product, they already trust you, so it's easier to try to sell them back, right? So trying to improve our conversion rate is something I think a lot of our entrepreneurs don't look at, and they don't say, okay, well, let me see from month to month. If I'm sending out 20 proposals and I'm only getting 2 for the last 2 or 3 months, how can I improve that conversion rate, right? Just simply getting more of the same type of customers to purchase is one of the ways that we could increase our revenue without having to spend a whole lot of money to get new customers, right? So that kind of conversion is super important, right? So every business really needs to be asking themselves. I want to say hi to Sherman again. Well, not again, but thank you, Sherman, for joining me. It is important, again, for us to look at our business and look at our customer base. I'm sure Shelly would say the same thing. You know, customers are not buying one-off, or at least if customers are buying one-off, that is an indication that, hey, maybe we need to look at our existing customers and how can I improve my conversion rate with my existing customers, right? So that's the second one, right? The last one, and we're wrapping up here. because this is also another space that we need to kind of look at, is nurturing existing customers, right? And I think this might be my favorite one here tonight, tonight or this morning. I think many businesses overlook this, right? They go into the next sale, as I said, right? They want to move on to the next customer or the new customer. And the truth is, your customer might already be somebody that you know, and it's sitting down in your database, it's sitting down in your email list, and you need to think about that, right? Companies that spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, big brands, to find new customers. But you know, when I speak to businesses, many of them have huge databases, and sometimes a huge portion of that they will always say is dormant, or people not interested, or this person purchased once and they definitely not they don't look back at those customers at all. And that type of analysis is important, right? They tend to completely ignore, sometimes, not all the time, but they tend to completely ignore the people who have already bought from them. So I challenge persons on the live today to go back and look at your database. Look at persons who have purchased from you this year. Look at persons who have purchased from you in the last 2, 3, 4 years, right? And let me go back to the same skincare example, right? Let's say someone buys a cleanser online today, right? You buy some kind of cleanser online. 2 months later, the cleanser is done. Maybe not for Caribbean persons, but let's say 2 months later, it's finished, right? Or 2 months later, they're starting to run out of that cleanser, right? Now, why wait for that individual to remember to come back to purchase the cleanser, right? Instead, and just think about this in an e-commerce space, because brands like Amazon have this automated already. Instead, you want to send them an email, right? This is what a lot of firms do now with little reminders, with birthday reminders. Or let's say you work in the bank and a loan is coming to an end. It really should have some sort of automation flag to try to get that person to come back for another loan. So this is what we're trying to do here, right? It could be automated, or it could be manual in terms of, you calling a customer, right? But instead of you just waiting for the customer to come back to you, I want you to instead think about, depending on your business, your type of business, think about sending an email. In the case of the skincare, you could just say, "Hi Sarah, hi Michelle, it's been about 2 months, right, since your purchase. We thought that you might be ready for another order, or a new order, or your next order," right? It becomes a reminder. Maybe too, you could actually recommend a complimentary product, right? So you could recommend like a toner, or you could recommend a night cream, or some kind of thing could also go. Or you could do some sort of bundle, right? Now in sales, this is what we call upselling or cross-selling, right? Where the customer has purchased before, but now you are trying to get them to purchase again. It might not be the same exact product, but what you're doing here is kind of nurturing that customer. You are staying top of mind, and you are going after another sale from an existing customer. So I will use my own business again, right? So let's say I delivered sales training, or I delivered LinkedIn training to a company, right? And I'm finished, time passes, we move on, right? Or people think, right? I think no, you can't move on. I think after 2 months or so, or maybe a month after, right? It depends on how you think your training is supposed to work and the value you see and how quickly they're supposed to get some sort of outcome out of the training. So a month later or 2 months later, I should be sending I should be reaching back out to those customers, right? Or I should be reaching back out to that customer that I did that LinkedIn training for and asking them how they are progressing. Are there any gaps? Is there opportunity to do, let's say, a more advanced sort of LinkedIn workshop or something like that? Or maybe I could begin to upsell another sort of marketing service where I am able to support them. Or let's say before we focused on supervisors in the organization with that training, maybe I can upsell now and say, okay, maybe it's time for the executive team, right? Senior leadership team to do some sort of training on LinkedIn and so on. Same client, right? So one client now can essentially become 2, 3, 5 different projects over the period of a year or 18 months, right? One customer. And again, you're not trying to sell all the time, right? It is simply because you stayed in touch, you stayed top of mind. And I think this is why I like this, right? Because it is one of the easiest ways to, again, to be able to stay in contact with the customer. So I want you to begin to think about that. When you sell a customer a product or a service, think about, how can I upsell them? What else can they potentially purchase from me at some point in time, right? You know, one of the easiest questions you can ask every client, one of the easiest is, how else can I help you? Right? You might have provided a product or service already, they purchase, and you know, it's just a simple question, how else can I help you? Because clients may have other issues or problems, but if they see you as a subject matter expert and they see you as a person that is helpful, then they may begin to talk about other issues that they have within their organization. Some you may be able to help with, some you may refer a colleague to, right? Or in relation to that. So that is important, really, really important, to just simply ask your customer, how else can I help you? It doesn't take that much time, right? So again, those were my three pointers that I wanted to discuss. I always go over time, right? So as we begin to wrap up tonight, this morning, again, feel free to put any comments in the chat, any questions you have in the chat, right? Let me just go back to my page here. Yeah, any questions, any comments in the chat. I'm just checking my pages here. You know how it is when you kind of go live and you you go live, you want to make sure, right? I want you to kind of remember one thing here, right? Our businesses will not be successful or will not be able to thrive with just one good month, right? We have to, and that's why I tell persons all the time, I work in a 90-day batch. I tend to, like, this is July, August, September. My brain is already in October, November, December. So I've kind of prepped my content. I kind of have an idea of projects that I'm working on for this quarter. You know, though I've done those things. And in order to avoid that kind of, feast and famine type environment, my brain is already in October to December, the next 90-day batch, right? So by the time I hit there, by the time I hit October, I'll be kind of looking at 2027. And that's what I want to reinforce here. Companies will not be able to grow if you just have one amazing month, or you just kind of work on one project and there isn't anything else in the pipeline. So it is important to begin to build the systems in place, right? Systems for you to attract your customer, systems for you to follow up with your customer, systems for how you convert those inquiries into potential customers, right? You need to have systems in place to keep your customer coming back for more. And in this age of AI, it's easier now to ask your customer, or ask AI, how can I do these things? How can I create a better system for me to attract more customers? How can I create a system where I follow up a whole lot better? How can I create a system where I'm converting more of the inquiries, right? How can I create a system for customer retention, right? If you really are able to build those systems in your organization, whether through something that is manual or something that is automated, or through a policy or a structure, your business in terms of your sales revenue will become more predictable, right? You'll be able to see gaps, and the more predictable you can get your sales to be, your revenue to be, the less stressful you'll be, right? The less stressful it will be, and the less stressful your business will be, right? So before I go, again, I would love to hear from you. Are there any of these areas here that you think you maybe have gaps in, or that you need help in, or that you didn't even think about that, hey, you need to think about, right? Follow up, conversion, upselling your customers, right? I think at all spaces we can improve on. For me, for sure, I could always do better. Because even sometimes when you have certain types of structures in place and it requires your time, it still is your time. But at least there is a system and a structure in place to help you improve what you are doing, right? So are you following up? Are you looking at your conversion rate? Are you nurturing your customers, right? Let me know in the comments. Feel free, if you watch the replay, to let me know, right? I really like to get person's feedback and thoughts. And of course, this is the final live goes next week, right? So before I leave you, there's one more live, right? There's one more live we're doing on Monday, and I'm doing it with a good colleague of mine, Desian, who is a virtual assistant, and we're going to kind of talk about how businesses can use webinars and use email to help them again gain customers, get customers, grow your business. That's super important as well. Again, we have these tools that we sometimes use, sometimes we don't use, but we could build a system and we could build a structure and we could have things so that we have a full pipeline. You always have customers coming in. So we have our last live on Monday at 8 p.m. We'll be going live on all these platforms, on Facebook, my Facebook page, my LinkedIn, YouTube. Hopefully I get X working. If not, well, we go live on the platforms we can go live on. And this will be our final live for this particular series. Of course, I have some wonderful workshops and stuff coming up soon for a lot of our entrepreneurs. 2026 has been, yes, I know, a kind of rough year, but it doesn't have to be. We just need to focus in and zone into those things that work, and kind of drill down on those things, right? So at that live, we're going to explore more strategies, more practical strategies to help you attract more clients. It's going to help you build the stronger relationships, which are super, super important in business, and that is going to help you grow your business more effectively. So I hope you found this live fun, valuable, and I really appreciate you taking the time to spend another live with me. Have a great evening. These types of conversations are super important. So whether, again, you're from Trinidad or you're from the Caribbean or anywhere across the world, I appreciate your support. I am Debbie Jolie, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday. Have a great night, have a great evening, have a great morning, and of course, stay consistent. Bye bye.